I'm Sara Azari, criminal trial attorney, NewsNation legal analyst, and host of Serving Justice on NewsNation. Boy, oh boy, this was a big day in the courtroom in Diddy's trial. So much so that I had to bring my notes with me. So let me start with the bombshell testimony. At the end of cross-examination, Cassie Ventura admitted that she just settled with the Intercontinental Hotel for $10 million, and then the defense sat down. Wow, that is going to be a huge argument for the defense that this was a money grab, that she demanded, she got paid $20 million from Diddy, she got another 10 from the hotel. Initially, she had demanded $30 million from Diddy, so at the end, she made her $30 million. And this is something that obviously did not come up on her direct examination, and she was very uncomfortable when she was asked this question by the defense attorneys. She was kind of, she wasn't expecting the question. So the jury is watching, and the defense will argue that this is all a money grab. But let me go back to the beginning of the day. The defense elicited testimony about Diddy's state of mind during the 2016 hotel altercation. Essentially, Cassie admitted that he was intoxicated. I think where the defense is going is that they're trying to divorce a drunk, drug-induced Diddy from someone who's sober. That he had a problem with drugs and alcohol at the time, and that but for that, he is not a violent person. Cassie also completely ignored the idea of a committed relationship. She says she wasn't really cheating when she was with these different people that she claims that Diddy would have been rageful over. Well, it's kind of disingenuous as well, because if you're not cheating, why are you using a burner phone? So I thought that was interesting. And the defense also tried to highlight her own propensity for violence, claiming that at some point she threatened to kill a man who purportedly had a freak-off video of her and Diddy. But that fell flat because she explained that that is at the direction of Diddy, that Diddy told her to get to the bottom of it. We also heard testimony about her psychological treatment for PTSD at a residential treatment center. That was interesting to me. It was a little conspicuous to me because why is the defense asking that? Is it to basically attack the reliability of her memory? That maybe if she has PTSD, she's exaggerating, she doesn't really remember, her memory's not reliable, right? I hope that's the case, and I hope there's going to be psychological records or other people that are going to testify that are experts about this, because otherwise it opened the door to highlighting that she was a victim of abuse and therefore suffered mental health trauma. Now, she provided additional detail about being raped by Diddy in 2018. And this is where it got interesting because her husband left the courtroom. Her husband might very well be called in by the defense as a witness when it's in their case. This is why. In 2018, when Cassie claimed she was raped by Diddy, she got a FaceTime call from her husband, Alex Fine. And she, in her testimony on cross, said that was not the same night that she was raped. That was a different night. That'll be interesting because her husband might be a witness to pin down, essentially, when this rape occurred and whether it was the same night that her husband made the FaceTime call. If it is, and if it's left to the jury to put two and two together, I think another part of the defense here is going to be she's doing this all out of shame. She's trying to save face for her husband, for her children, for her family, for her mother, right? And so she's making up a rape that is otherwise a consensual sexual encounter. Now remember, rape is a violent predicate act to the racketeering charge, which carries 20 years to life. So this is serious, and if there's two or more, then he's guilty of that, if there's a criminal enterprise and there's two or more predicate acts. So we've got way more than two already out of her testimony. Another piece of testimony that was very important and caused sparks in the courtroom at the end of the day was the testimony of Dawn Richard, who came in and said in 2009, Diddy essentially hit Cassie over the head with a skillet of eggs that she was making for his breakfast, and that she then fell to the ground in fetal position. And the next day, Richard testified that Diddy called them into the studio and essentially told her and another woman, another witness, that they are not to talk about this because otherwise they could go missing. And so that obviously caused a lot of sparks, and the day ended with that. And here's what I took away from that. Look, first of all, I think the prosecution's playing very dirty here. Cassie never testified to that 2009 incident of abuse. And that's significant. Getting hit with a skillet on the head, she never testified to that. Now, that doesn't mean that another witness can't testify to that. And the prosecution is probably going to say she's so traumatized and abused that her memory is altered. And she didn't remember that, which is actually lacks credibility, in my opinion. But nonetheless, the argument that the defense is making is that, look, you can't bring in this testimony about the next day and the threat that they might go missing. In other words, they might get killed if they say anything about this, because it has nothing to do with sex trafficking. Essentially, sex trafficking is the hook here. So the prosecution's playing dirty. And you know what I have to say as a defense attorney of 25 years? If you have a good case, just stick to your case. You don't need to play dirty. The fact that the prosecution is playing dirty here, never asked her on the stand about this incident, but then they ask the next witness about this, and they go further to talk about a threat the next day, this tells me that they have a weak case, which I've been saying all along, and they're playing dirty to make up for what they're missing. Overall, look, I think the defense calculated correctly that Cassie was a credible and sympathetic witness, and therefore they didn't go very hard on her. They're going to argue hard on her, but they didn't go hard on her, and I think that was really good tactic on the part of the defense. The prosecution, I think the redirect of Cassie was completely unnecessary. Why rehabilitate her and let it be, right? I think the strongest redirect is to say, we have no further questions of this witness. You may be excused, right? But there's this need for lawyers to get in there and try to rehabilitate, even when it's not necessary. So I thought that was really unnecessary. But, you know, overall, there are challenges ahead for both the defense and the prosecution. Ultimately, the jury has to separate the testimony about beatings and abuse and threats from the charges that Diddy is actually on trial for, which is sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. And that is extremely challenging for any human being to do, including this jury. And I think, you know, in the big picture, this case looks like it's really testing society's ability to discern bad and good moments in a relationship. It's truly a litmus test for that. In this sort of the thick of Me Too, right? How much is that going to, expose Diddy to a guilty verdict, especially on racketeering, which is the most serious charge here. But again, I think this is a big test for how much sexual abuse is tolerated, and that a jury could even find him guilty of racketeering. That's all I got. I'll be back on Monday with more on the Diddy trial.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.